Welcome back, viewers. My name's Marianne with Guidescent. We're talking today, it's a continuation on our webcasts of our threat recon. Today, we're specifically talking about ransomware. And we appreciate Drew's time again, as these are the Director of Threat Recon Cybersecurity. And so we'll just kind of jump right into it, Drew. What is and what causes ransomware?
Sure, thanks. So ransomware is the biggest problem that we're seeing really in cybersecurity. Well, one of the biggest problems in cybersecurity. It's a way in which the perpetrator has deployed an encrypted code of some sort into either part or all of an infrastructure, and basically holds all of the files and assets that are behind that encrypted code ransom. They're holding it hostage, and until the victim or the target pays, usually in Bitcoin, some ridiculous amount of remittance, they can't get access to those critical assets to keep their businesses afloat.
And with the continuation of war in Eastern Europe and the support of state actors like Russia, China, and Iran, the threat of ransomware attacks impacting local businesses as well as industry leaders is becoming very real. Ransomware attacks continue to cause tremendous impact to financial operations and reputations for organizations across all business sectors. And the attack patterns being used are becoming more complex as well, as individuals and small businesses are being more widely targeted for ransom by threat actors.
And so this is a real problem, and it's not going away, it's just getting worse. Most of the bad guys come from, honestly, the foreign service group out of Russia. And there are other groups. China has some, and various hacker groups have some. And it's always for capital gain, so that they can exploit the target victim and then use those assets that are being exploited to further hold those victims hostage for financial gain.
Ransomware is a type of malicious software designed to block access to a computer system until a sum of money is paid. The consequences of a ransomware attack extend beyond damage and destruction of data or monetary loss and encompasses theft of intellectual property, productivity losses, and reputational harm.
So with that, we have a series of questions that have come from our viewers. I have one question that I know that, how important is a playbook? Like we talked about that, steps with the BIA and all of those things. How important is a playbook for ransomware?
So a playbook would be very handy if you understand the fundamental defense processes that you need to have in place first. And this is a particular situation where ransomware actually can be protected or defended against using code, using certain applications, tools, certainly processes, awareness, and we can get into that a little bit more as we kind of dive into the discussion.
The concept of a playbook, which has been borrowed from the world of athletic activities, references a series of strategies and procedures or plays that are performed by a group of individuals in response to a set of circumstances or events. A cyber defense playbook, such as Guidescent's Ransomware Defense Guide, can help organizations understand how to interact with a ransomware event, how to address the potential from a compromise, and how to reduce the likelihood of the event being successful in damaging the business.
How does backup and recovery plan work with ransomware?
So we talked about in prior discussions, business impact analysis and business continuity and disaster recovery. And certainly this is one of those disasters that can be recovered from, but backups are probably part of the biggest component of making sure that your infrastructure is safe. Ensuring that your organization has files backed up properly, consistently, on a regular basis, making sure that you've got access to those that are offline, so that if something does happen where part of your system is corrupted or held hostage, you can go into another environment and retrieve those assets and restore your operations.
If your most important systems crashed tomorrow, how would that affect your business operations? Data loss planning and disaster recovery doesn't sound exciting, but it's essential for every business organization to keep going. A backup and disaster recovery plan includes a combination of policies, procedures, and technologies that maintain business continuity in the event of a security event like a ransomware attack.
Excellent. So if I'm in my daily business and I'm just logging into my computer and something comes to attack, how best do what am I looking for?
Well, ransomware doesn't start generally just out of the get-go. It's usually planted as part of what we call, it's often part of what we call an APT, an advanced persistent threat. The bad guy has probably already deployed some type of code in the system. It could have been a week ago, a month ago. I've gone through 6 ransomware attacks, and we've seen ransomware attacks triggered from threat actors that were in the system a year and a half prior to. And so these advanced persistent threats they're deploying some type of code, usually a beacon of some sort that says, hey, there's some activity going on over here. Let's raise awareness and then let's act on it.
An advanced persistent threat, or APT, is an attack campaign by stealthy threat actors, typically a nation state or state-sponsored group, which gains unauthorized access to a computer network and remains undetected for an extended period of time. Sometimes months, sometimes even years. The targets of these attacks, which are systematically identified, studied, and selected, often include large enterprises or governmental networks.
So it's not just something that happens overnight. It usually comes through a phishing campaign, which we've talked about phishing before, and or files that are unprotected, access to the system that's perhaps not as secure. They've gotten user privileges, and then they go do their thing.
And 60% of small companies go out of business within 6 months of falling victim to a data breach or cyber attack as a result of an APT or ransomware event.
Drew, can you elaborate a little bit on system patching?
Sure. So again, we've talked about Microsoft many times. Patch Tuesday is something that happens on a regular basis, where there are always new updates to all the operating system components of Microsoft. And so other vendors also deploy usually on Patch Tuesday. And a lot of big companies will say, oh, it's Patch Tuesday. We got to look at whether or not we need to deploy this patch. And if we do deploy this patch, does it affect something else? Does it break something else? Or will it secure something else? So it's important to always keep your systems updated. And even if you think that there may be something dubious about a patch, deploy it.
Regardless of the type of device or endpoint, all systems need to be optimized and kept secure. Ignoring patch management can include exposing an organization to leaks and breaches, loss of productivity, and reputation damage. The ultimate goal of patch management is to keep your systems operating smoothly while also protecting system endpoints from threat actors.
Generally, what we see is a lot of large organizations, they will deploy them in what's called a sandbox, which is a system that's isolated from their network so that they can test that update, that patch, to make sure that it doesn't break something else. But a lot of organizations can't afford that kind of a system, to have a secondary system just to deploy and test things. But if you can, that would be a really safe thing to implement into your infrastructure. But generally speaking, I always just advise, just deploy it, update it, make sure that it's globally updated, and that way. And that includes your mobile devices as well. So always keep your systems updated and patched.
So now we're going to talk about a little bit of the antivirus software. It kind of goes hand in hand to have it, just like updating your patches. Tell us about that.
So antivirus software was really great back in the day. And it's funny, when we started Symantec 20 some odd years ago, 24 years ago, I think 25 years ago, it was a little Canadian company that had some disparate technologies, and then we threw it all out and kept the security stuff, and up we went. But it's funny, while we were building Symantec, we were using McAfee, which was a competing antivirus tool. And as Peter Norton developed Norton Antivirus, that became kind of the standard in the marketplace. But antivirus alone isn't enough. You need to make sure that the tools that you're deploying has an anti-malware component in it. There's lots of anti-tools. Marketing does a great job with all these software applications. But you're going to want to make sure that you're fully deployed and you've got everything turned on. The problem is, when you deploy an antivirus or an anti-malware tool, it's going to check everything. So adware, all that stuff that you're getting, the spam, that stuff is where the bad guys are resting. They're just sitting in there looking for an opportunity to get in. And so you've got to make sure that your systems are updated and that you keep those patched as well, because they're constantly releasing new updates to your systems. Some of them a little more than others, and we know which ones those are. But you do need to take them into consideration when you're looking at deploying a defensive posture to reduce the risk of a ransomware attack.
Anti-malware and antivirus are not the same. They complement one another and form the most fundamental defense against malicious software. Anti-malware detects more advanced forms of malware, including zero-day attacks, while antivirus software defends against the traditional, more established threats that we see more commonly. A computer virus spreads from user to user by replicating itself through programming a file. Antivirus works to identify known threats using signature-based detection. This type of detection matches file signatures to a database of known malware. By contrast, anti-malware utilizes heuristic-based detection to proactively find source codes that indicate a threat.
Drew, let's talk about user access.
Oh, okay. So one of the big defenses that you can kind of implement is this concept called principle of least privilege, which means you have access to only that which you need and only for the time that you need access. And then after that, it no longer recognizes you as having access or having privilege. And so that means every time that you log in, you have to authenticate who you are, and you have to make sure that the system recognizes who you are, no matter how often you've done it or who you are. Doesn't matter who you are in the system. You have to always re-authenticate yourself. And that's called principle of least privilege. Just doing that can make a big, big difference in how you defend your system from anything coming into it. So very, very important.
Principle of least privilege refers to a critical security design in which a user is given the minimum levels of access, which include verified permissions only necessary to perform a defined set of tasks.
Privileged access is something that a lot of organizations don't really take in consideration, but it is one of the best, I think, one of the three real core components of defending your system against ransomware. So principle of least privilege, patching systems, and of course the almighty multi-factor authentication, which is also very important.
You talk about avoiding enabling and email attachments and all of that. Can you expound on that?
Sure. So obviously we get a lot of junk mail, a lot of crap comes through the system. And unfortunately, most of these attacks are initiated because somebody has triggered something by clicking on something. And it's usually through a phishing campaign. We've talked about this before. And there's an attachment in there. Ooh, I won something. Or somebody has sent me, a bank has sent me an account detail about my system or a credit card. Or I'm going on vacation and somebody found out about it. And so they're sending something that's masquerading as from the host. And I click on a link, and that link will then trigger something else that I'm not aware of, and it goes into the background of my system and plants some Trojan horse, which then opens something else up that gets access to a file that either turns off privilege or elevates their privileges so that they can move into the system. What's called pivoting. They get in the system and they turn, and then they turn off security tools, and then they plant something. So it all starts from, usually, I don't say it's always, but most of the time it starts from accessing something through an email attachment or someplace that I shouldn't have been going, that I should not have been accessing. So
how do we protect ourselves from not following unsolicited web links? And I mean, how do you know they're safe? I mean, just as a businesswoman, I'm constantly looking through and seeing, okay, is this something I should click on or shouldn't I? Or what are some of your instant red flags?
Yeah, so it's the same thing as if you see somebody come up to the door at your house. If you don't recognize them, challenge them. You're not going to just let some perfect stranger into your house and let them walk around and look and see, oh, well, you got this over here. And, oh, what's going on in the drawer over here? So that's it's very much the same way when you're dealing with your environment, your infrastructure. You're going to make sure that you authenticate, verify who they are, verify that you need to talk to them, and verify that what they're presenting to you is authentic. If it's not, don't go there. It's that simple. And, curiosity has always been something that we all just fall for. Right? And they're counting on it. these problems have been around for as long as we've been communicating with each other. And it doesn't take much to get into a system by simply taking advantage of our curiosities. And so what I would suggest is it's okay to be curious, but just verify that your curiosity isn't going to get you into trouble by clicking on something that you have no idea where it came from, or that it's the actual authentic link that you need to get access to.
Drew, thank you so much for your knowledge. We've talked about phishing and patching and all of those things. What else can encompass in ransomware that you feel like our viewers today need to know and need to understand?
Well, it's interesting that you would ask that question. We have a lovely little ransomware defense guide, which I'd be happy to share with anybody. Obviously, it's not the definitive answer, but it would certainly reduce the risk of being targeted for a ransomware attack. Again, and we've talked about this before too, ransomware is all about outrunning everybody else. It's not about outrunning the bad guy, because the bad guy is always going to be there and he's always going to be in your shadows. But it's about building the type of defense that will at least provide the fundamental protection so that the bad guys will look somewhere else. They're always looking for the weakest link. And if you've got strong passwords, you've got your systems patched, you've got the updates in place, you've got multi-factor authentication, you've got really strong defensive tools in place at your endpoints, then you've got really the great foundations to protect and defend against most ransomware type attacks. It doesn't mean that you're 100% going to protect from everything, but you're going to reduce the risk greatly of a compromise and from a ransomware even happening within your environment.
Wow, there's so much, and it's so useful, and we so appreciate your time today.
My pleasure.
Thank you also to our viewers that have really jumped on with us in these webcasts. It'll be a fun adventure that we continue to learn on and help each other and help industries out there. We are here. If you ever need to reach out, I'm Marianne at guidascent.com. That's an email directly that you can reach out to me and ask those questions, because this is an important topic, and we have the mastermind right here.
Whatever.
Yes, here for us. And he is always available to answer questions, and he's always willing. And we just appreciate that, Drew.
Grateful. Yeah, and honestly, if you have any questions, reach out to me, Drew at guidascent.com. We can certainly talk to any size organization. Again, having experience with, more than a half dozen ransomware events. They're not pleasant, they're expensive, and I've mentioned this before, more than half of the businesses that get hit with a ransomware attack never survive after 6 months. So if you've got any kind of suspicion that something nefarious is happening in the background, reach out to us. And you can also reach us at cybersecurity@guidascent.com. We'd be happy to also share this defense guide with anybody who has interest in reading more about how they defend themselves against ever having that problem surfacing in their environment.
Thank you. And thank you. We look forward to hearing your feedback and your questions. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks.
Can I sit here with that?
Yeah, you're good.
Welcome back, viewers. My name is Marianne. This is Drew, the Director of Cyber Security Threat Recon. We're talking today about, you're giving me that damn look, and don't do that again. Either yes or no. You're just going like this. Like it's bad or good. Don't do that to me.
We may keep this one too.
No, this is a disaster. Sorry. You're like, is that the word?
That's what you're supposed to do. I'm supposed to look.
Welcome back, viewers. My name is Marianne. Today we are talking about what... You piece of crap.
Keep going. Keep rolling.
Okay. Oh my gosh. If we get this right, this is going to be a miracle today.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome back, viewers. My name is Marianne. I'm here with our Director of Threat Recon. What